triple elixir with Earthquake and Plague, sudden death, and oh my gosh, at the last second.
That was actually a big upset. Sudden death.
I think it's their game right there. Go Zero. There you have it.
Congratulations, what a great game.
Well, I've been told the miner slipped into the studio and started whacking away at one of the PCs there with his little shovels. So I guess the studio's going to have to work on our defense. So sorry for the quick interruption there, guys, but we'll be getting back into one of those games real soon.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have the Lemons level defense in the studio, so we did our best. We got it back up and running as quick as we could. But first game, I mean, yeah, as we were saying before, we were unfortunately cut off. Really great difference between those two burner spells, obviously, with the Earthquake over the Fireball. We saw the Fireball have a lot of value in game number one, but two, completely different decks. So we're going to have another mirror matchup.
Yeah, will we see something the same? That's definitely an interesting question. But with SB, I believe it was, taking out that first one. It's a good start for them, and yeah, just really showing that they can play pretty much the same thing, but at a much higher skill level there, because they were definitely quite far ahead of default by the end of that. Okay, we've got an elixir pump coming in here. Changes now that, you know, it's a you pretty much always get like guaranteed, I think, like plus elixir if you use it. Is that sort of how it works when you're comparing it to those big spells?
Yeah, something along the lines of that. It can have its benefits. Obviously, it's a 50-50 whether or not it gets spelled out, whether it's sort of tower targeted by, you know, Hog Rider or Giant, something like that. But here's the Golden Knight. With the Elite Barbs, I'd imagine maybe a 3 Musketeers deck even, if we're going to be brave to guess, but I highly doubt it.
I mean, look, Musketeer did get a little bit of a buff, you know, not too long ago either. And there we go, in single elixir time, having 2 pumps down on the field. That is very brave. And what it's going to mean is that this cannon card takes the aggro as the skeletons come in on the back of that Princess Tower. And it's just getting massive, massive damage there. I mean, you have to expect that if you're being that greedy with elixir pumps.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be expecting that, and you have to have a card available to deal with something like that. And unfortunately, in the cycle, default didn't really have too much available other than the LZ. So that's going to draw out a pretty unfortunate trade, and he's just going to continue pumping up on that backside there. But it's going to be the counter push from SB now.
And the other thing is, Proto, I mean, if you've got the Tombstone available, that is such a fantastic counter to Elite Barbs, right? I mean, that's 3 elixir versus 6. I don't care how many pumps you've got on the field. Hey, he's called it.
It is. There you go.
Musketeers come out.
Interesting choice. As you said, they've had that buff recently with the Golden Knight as well. They're actually going to do some pretty good damage here. Musketeer is going to get on the left side. There's a big, hefty amount of damage coming on the right as well. It's going to draw the arrows, but unfortunately for FB, he's going to take a considerable amount of damage on both lanes. Counter push from the right now. Lead buffs counter. It's an interesting choice again to take out the graveyard, but he's dumped a lot of elixir into shutting that down.
He has, but he's got that elixir to spare, you'd have to say. I mean, look at that. He's leaked 10 at this point, actually, default has. So that's kind of eating away into his lead that these pumps are giving him. We're now going into overtime, and there is a 500 health lead still in the way for SB. So still in front at this point, but you would think the further you go into overtime, the elixir pumps just get better and better.
They do, especially when you've drawn all the elixir out as well. Default, huge from him there. What a comeback. 600 health, managing to keep that in his field. The elixir pumps coming in clutch in OT there. Pretty much triple elixir given that he had that pump going, but what a way to come back from that with that 3 Musketeers. I was hoping that it was the case. It could have been a Royal Giant or something, but I'm very happy that it was the 3 Muskets, because what a card.
Yeah, you know, one of the most, is it not the most expensive card in the game? You know, that's what you want, those elixir pumps out there, just to make it work, and so it doesn't feel like you're just going to get countered by like a single fireball or something, of course, which is also an option. I wonder, actually, did we see was it SB playing the fireball in the first game? I mean, that could be
sure it was SB.
Right. So do you think that's a counter pick on that deck right there? You're like, okay, what absolutely destroys Three Musketeers? Fireball, maybe even lightning? But, you know, you wait for them to play that in an earlier deck and you bring that out as a counter pick afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, the Rocket as well. We saw that in the Lemons game. So it's a card that people are happy to bring. Surprising that we didn't see it there. We didn't actually have too much of a counterspell at all from SB in that second matchup. I believe the only thing he really had available was the Snowball. So it kind of made things really difficult dealing with that Three Muskets because he didn't have too much splash available either or any that could directly reach them. I mean, they do have a considerable amount of range as well, which allowed them to just take out any tanky troops that he put down and then ultimately get onto the tower, draining that elixir out as well. I mean, the pumps coming in clutch there for default, ultimately winning him that game.
Yeah, there was also a really clutch heal spirit right at the end. I think when he's trying to take out the tombstone, the heal spirit came in at the perfect moment and took out those skeletons. And that's what allowed those barbarians and elite barbarians to finally connect with that tower and do that last lick of damage to finish off there. When before that, yeah, I think he was behind.
Yeah, default did struggle to get the 3 mon. He did have a couple of shots here or there that connected, but it wasn't a concisive sort of volley. But then, as you mentioned, that heal spirit getting on through, just allowing them to lock on in those dying seconds of that last sort of, 20, 15 seconds towards the end of it, just allowed him to come back from the brink. I mean, the way he defended that graveyard as well, yes, it cost him pretty much all the elixir he had saved up, but the pump having to at the time allowed him to get right back up, counter push down that right lane, and ultimately, I mean, look, he walked away with the dub. So it worked. It worked.
I mean, it almost feels like when you've got that matchup against like Elixirs and with the Three Musketeers, it's like you're always on the back foot. But then once you get going, it's very hard to stop you. So you have to really keep the tempo up. And let's do that by getting into our third and final game here, the decider between SB and Default.
It's going to be interesting to see what decks come out as well. We still have Zaps available for both players, I believe, and Log as well. SB is going to show that one early. The Zap coming out from Default as well, so there we go. Skeletons in the back, though. So this is looking like more of a cycle setup for bots, possibly. And there we go. Hog Rider to come out first, but the Goblin Cage actually to counter. So both players looking like they've got a bit of a cycle build coming in.
Oh, no. The Goblin goes for the Skeletons first. And I think that means there's one extra hit on the tower there coming out. The Firecracker gets nothing done with that well-placed Fireball, and we're going to continue on. I mean, it feels like Goblin Cage is a really great counter to Hog at the moment. Or at least we're seeing it come out a lot.
Yeah, we are. Even against Royal Giant decks, stuff like that, it's an interesting card to see. But the Bone Dragon's actually an interesting choice. They're going to come out to attempt to do some good damage. And the Mighty Miner as well.
Okay. Which side is he going to do the damage on? You never know. He's always got that explosive escape up his sleeve if he wants to use it. Oh, I don't know about playing the Valkyrie against him. That's... Oh, okay. We'll get there in just enough time. The Firecracker on the back of that doing enough damage. But of course, like that Inferno-esque sort of troop, he ramps up.
Yeah, he does. And I was about to say, these last 3 cards here for SB better be something in terms of a tower or air damage, because it's Lava Loon on the left side coming out. Firecracker obviously just being used in the rotation, so this is going to be interesting. He's going to have to cycle back on through, but he's actually dealt with this pretty well. The balloon is going to make it on though, so this is going to be some huge damage here for Default.
Oh, yes. A couple of big hits there, as well as that death damage. Even getting the Firecracker down further. I mean, the Firecracker pretty good at sort of trying to deal with the balloon and those the Lava Hound pups at the same time, but unfortunately, that's the risk you run with the Firecracker. Always trying to activate that King Tower can be a problem. Will the Mighty Miner get onto it? No, once again, it is the Valkyrie to come out.
Unfortunately, that bomb didn't connect either, so he's just going to cycle that Zap and try and get something onto the tower here, because unless he wants to go for a late Lava Loon push, he's going to have to commit a lot of elixir, especially with this Hog trying to come down on the right side. Goblin Cage isn't going to draw, so unfortunately, he's going to take a considerable amount of damage here, and this is actually going to be a pretty close one, given that Hog Rider is target tower, and the balloon is yet to see another play because he's scared of that Inferno Tower.
Yeah, and with 267 left now into overtime, can we see the Fireball Zap combo come down to finish this off and put it into Default's hands? The series feels like it's kind of waiting for him here. He's just trying to put pressure on the right-hand side just to make sure that he doesn't have the elixir to do that. Needs an answer for this Miner, actually even pumping out the Hog on the left-hand side here. The Miner gets started on the tower, but the Log finally there to finish on. He's actually just going to use the explosive escape to get over and finish off the other side. Default with a bit of style, actually taking out our first 3-game series of the night.
I mean, using the Miner there to sort of take that tower to get on through. Yes, they probably would have done it by themselves, but in saying that, it's always good to have that layer of sort of, I don't know, safety, if you want to call it that, getting those troops on, just the guaranteed sort of ability to do it. He did have the Fireball. Interesting that we didn't see him use the Fireball early on. He was trying to fend off the Hog for a considerable amount of time, but he was dealing with it pretty well. I mean, he was kind of card dumping. You know, the Hog would come out, we'd see the Goblin Cage, the Skeleton Dragons, and the Mighty Miner come out to counter it, but it was just to make sure that it didn't get on. And it worked in the end. I mean, that Hog only got on 2-3 times of his deployment. So a pretty good success rate in the defense side of things for that Hog Rider.
Yeah, you know, it was getting the chips there. The way he was using the skeletons with it actually was really good as well. It feels like that's been a more common defense now that the Goblin Cage is coming out. You use those skeletons not really to do any damage, but just to distract the Goblin Brawler while your Hog goes on and continues to get 1, maybe even 2 hits on the tower.
Yeah, not really surprised when we saw the combo. And it was used really well there by SB. But unfortunately, Default's Lava Lunia came out on top with the Mighty Miner pick. Maybe a normal Miner there would have been something that I would be more sort of, I would guess, normalized into seeing. We don't usually see the Mighty Miner paired with the Lava Lunia. You usually see the Miner paired with the Lava Lunian. But, I mean, it worked out. In the end, the Mighty Miner did some pretty good damage, especially with that Valk on the board.
Yeah, it's almost like that discussion we were having last series, though, right, Proto? It's like, sure, for 1 elixir more, why not just take the champion card, right? It gives you those kind of options, as we saw there. Explosive Escape is a really fun one to use. You can do some pretty tricky things with it. All right, let's see what the next 2 players have got up their sleeves as we look at Shek Pro and the other player there, Lana, coming through. So we got Seed 5 and Seed 12 there, also pretty close in trophies.
Yeah, I mean, this season, at least for the players that we have for the tournament, they've all been on the grind, it seems, going forward here for this tournament. Maybe want to flex their trophies a little bit. But yeah, seeding doesn't really seem like it's had much of an impact at all on tonight's games. Yes, the players may have, in you know, lower spots compared to who they're going up against, but that's, I believe, if I'm not wrong, the second lower seed upset that we've seen this evening. So, I mean, Seed's not really having too much of a telltale on how these games are playing out this evening.
Yeah, and, you know, maybe that's just part of sort of not having that really established, like, tournament ecosystem running around ANZ up to this point. I know there's been things over the years, like some Nations Cup stuff and that kind of thing. But yeah, it does make it a little bit harder to get a read on which of these players, you know, are really sitting at the top of the mountain. That's what we're going to determine, and we're going to award them with a whole bag of cash at the end of this tournament. So Lana now coming up against Shek Pro here in their first match, and it's going to be a scummy split at the start just to get things started.
Drawing the arrows is a good way to start there as well for Shek, because that's going to allow him to play some of these maybe less tanky cards that he has, and the War Break is actually going to connect early on here, and a good placement of the Skeleton King is going to allow him to collect those souls of those recently perished cards. So pair that with something like the Dark Goblin, and this is going to be a pretty good counter offensive here.
Yeah, well, the Dark Goblin coming up against Night Witch, that's a fantastic combo there, as well as, I mean, that would have been getting so many souls ready. And if it had just been up that 1 second and been, you know, been able to pop that with the drill tanking, that could have been a fantastic push there. At least that's what it seemed like the idea behind that push was for Shek, but unfortunately doesn't quite manage that. The soul summon, though, does come out for Lana.
That is a great kite too of the Skeleton King with the wall breakers. Unfortunately, they're not going to get the tower. And that Skeleton King's going to actually collect a lot of souls going up the left lane. But the P.E.K.K.A coming down, that is the big win condition here for Lana. He's going to be relying on that card. And he's going to start going to work. But here is the summon. But a great arrows there to shut that one down.
Yeah, really needed that. Otherwise, the P.E.K.K.A was going to be working on the little guys for far, far too long. You hear that armor just clanking across the battlefield now as we try and see how Shek Pro wants to take this. He's got the Skami there. Arrow's already used, so that can't be shut down immediately, but the bat's coming out from the Knight, which will deal with this, albeit taking a little bit of damage on the way.
Interesting that he keeps using the Fireball to try and deal with these sort of individual Elixir cards. He's losing that trade pretty much every time he plays it, but here we go. It's going to be the left push. Are we going to see the summon? Yes, we are. But the P.E.K.K.A is going to be able to shut down the King himself, the arrows as well. So far, this has been great defense here from Lana, albeit struggled in the opening part with that counter production. But here we go. The Zappies, great counter the Inferno Tower, and he's going to get pretty far down the left lane, but no avail.
Yep, seeing quite a bit of the Inferno Tower this time. Oh, big connect there from the wall breakers. And we see the GG coming out from Lana. Thinks that might have just put the pin in it.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it does. The Skeleton King now charged up as well, coming down the left. This is going to be good to stop that P.E.K.K.A. But with the drill coming forward as well, this might actually go on for a considerable amount of time. I mean, the poison's down. This is good chip damage. The goblins to come out. He's not actually going to get the tower, and this might be an interesting counter push here from Lana, given that he two really big cards up and the graveyard late no T.
All right, are we going to have spells in cycle to be able to deal with this Skami and let the graveyard come through and get some damage? Of course, the graveyard's dealt with, but then we've essentially got a second graveyard. As you said, a fully stocked Skeleton King is going to pop up. I think it's like 18 skeletons there with a fully charged ability. That's only one less than the graveyard. Another poison coming through. At this point, we're getting so close. The goblins are going to finish it off, and Shek will come out on top in game one.
I mean, Lana called GG early on there, but he actually had a pretty good push in that left lane with the Skeleton King. He could have taken that back in a bit of a reverse sweep, but unfortunately, Skeleton King counter there coming out from Shek, and it didn't really sort of turn into too much there for him, unfortunately. So was he right in calling it? I don't know. Could have gone both ways, but at the end of the day, it went in favor of Shek. So, yeah. Look.
It's interesting when you get the Skeleton Kings kind of off kilter, off tempo like that. They just feed into each other, right? So you get, if you're the one who plays the Skeleton King second, especially, you know, it's a really good way of dealing with that soul summon, and then also you can fully stock it yourself.
Well, I mean, as soon as he pops as well, he's instantly recharging. So, you know, when you pop that, you can then recharge off the counter skeleton. So not really surprising we saw those two cards pretty much just cancelling each other out at the tower lane. Obviously, they had the tower there supporting as well, Shek. So he had a pretty good setup for the defense there. But the graveyard, I'm sort of a little bit upset that Lonnie bought that out 30 seconds into OT, because provided had he got that out early, we already mentioned it a couple times tonight. We've seen Graveyard, we've seen Tombstone paired with the Giant Skeleton King, and he hasn't really had too much avail with this pairing. So again, showing to be not effective.
Well, Shek's used that deck now, of course, in this dual format. That means we won't see it again. We won't see those cards on his side, at least. No more Skeleton Kings. Once again, both players just chucking out a couple of emotes while they wait for this to happen. They're going to split the bats just to cycle through and start this off. Shek, not even remotely worried about that. Must have very much a hand that he does not want to play first on. So does this mean it's a more counter push heavy kind of thing? Lava Hound, that's a big investment to start off with there from Lana.
Archer Queen to come out to counter though. So yeah, both players holding onto their hands or opening cards for a considerable amount of time. Obviously, it is going to be Lana that comes out on top there. But the Royal Ghost on the right side, he's going to be able to do some decent damage, provided he doesn't get shut down. And indeed he will, Skeleton Army there. But Lava Hound has connected, so things are going to get interesting here in this left lane. And it's actually some good damage going out.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a good use of the Click and Cape there to retarget the baby dragon, so she'd be on the fisherman instead. That does allow him to clean up and not take too much damage. Okay, all right, we got a clone deck happening up in here, and we've got the ranged bats who take out that tower like it's nothing.
Oh, yeah, the clone deck with the lumberjack and the bats.
Son.
What a great play there as well from Lana, reading that RG play and just sending it down the left lane. An awesome elixir trade and ultimately tower trade. I mean, you can see it in Shek's face.
Look at the body language, man.
He's destroyed after that.
He knows it's done already. I mean, wow. Let's not go too far. I mean, it would have to be one hell of a comeback. And I guess the other thing is that is a bit of a surprise tactic as well, though, right? So it's probably not going to work twice. Now that you know that's coming, Shek probably will be able to deal with it a second time, but he'd have to get so far ahead in the meantime. And, you know, he's putting RGs on both sides of the map, trying to do this. This seems really tough.
Yeah, and 2 Lava Hounds down now is pretty much a telltale sign that this is not looking good for Shek. He's going to chuck the early GGs out. I mean, the clone Lava Hound itself is insane, and Shek's not even going to put anything down. This is going to be the first 3 crown of the evening. He is going to drop the lightning, but it doesn't look too good. Defeat is in the eyes of Shek. He's going to let it happen. It's going to be the Lava Hounds to clean up. Good games. Lana's going to come back for game 2.
All right, so was that the first 3 crown?
First 3 crown of the night of the tournament
tonight? Yeah, there we go. Man, that tower evaporated like it was made out of fairy floss, which it may as well be because it was colored pink by the rage there as the bats just tore through it. Oh damn. That was cool. That was a really cool moment, and you know, the surprise factor definitely works sometimes.
I mean, what it was 2 lumberjacks, 12 bats, and then the first lumberjack died, but the clone lumberjack was still up, so you had the lumberjack and all 12 bats going at the tower. I mean, excuse me. As you said, surprise factor 101. I mean, a clone spell, not something you see very often in competitive Clash, but I mean, highlight. There you go. As soon as it cut, it's something you don't expect, but it is a gem. That was a really good play.
Yeah, and I feel like we don't see Zap as much. Like, obviously in the dual format, you know, you are having to work through those small spells if you need them, and maybe you're going to go from Snowball to maybe to log to Snowball and then to Zap. I would say is maybe you know, the preference of a lot of pros at the moment. But yeah, with that, you know, so you don't have that in your deck. You're not ready for it. I think it was still in single elixir time as well. And I mean, we'd have to go back and watch it, but you know, like, was there a bait on the other side or something like that was sort of lulled him into the false sense of security, where it's like, oh, I've got a bit of an elixir lead over here, you know, maybe I can commit just a little bit more, and then all of a sudden you just plant all your eggs on the other side of the field there, and it just, wow, absolutely crushed through that tower like it was nothing. All right. Yeah. Well, a fun little tactic there from Lana. Does he have another one up his sleeve? That's the question. Shek looks like he is perhaps mentally recovered a little bit here, as it's the war of the emotes to start off with.
Hog cycle straight off the bat here for Shek. Hog's going to get 2 hits on. No, 1 hit on, as the bowler does his job well and deals with that issue. The log to come out, an interesting choice, but some tower damage, I guess, at the end of the day. Inferno Dragon bowler, though, on the left lane. The Ice Brute to counter is going to be good, paired with the Skeletons. Unfortunately, a little bit too early there, though. So that means, great tornado.
So we've just got a lot of stall coming out here from Shek trying to deal with this, right? I mean, he's very happy about having this cycle deck, because that works very well against something like the Inferno Dragon. A freeze comes down, and I mean, the Inferno Dragon had a chance to do big damage there, but no, the Fireball will put a stop to that.
This is a very, very cheap deck here from Shek as well. I mean, this is going to be coming in under sort of, you know, 3.3 here. Especially going up against a heavier end deck that Lana has. But in saying that, the heavier deck is actually losing out at the moment, with Shek holding the lead there on that left tower. A lot of damage dealt.
That Hog's been doing the work, right? It's been getting through, and you know, all the fancy fun stuff that Lana could throw at him. Well, it's got a hit to make it work. Okay, so now we've got the lumberjack there, followed up by the balloon. The rage is going to come in, and that that cannon is going to do absolutely nothing to help hit this tower. The King Tower also not activated, so bombs just coming out. I think that was 3 bomb hits, as well as the death damage. You can see Sheck very unhappy about that. The rework to the balloon means it just hits faster, but not harder here. But in that situation, 3 bombs instead of, say, 2, you know, in a previous time, it's doing more than ever.
That's got to be mentally destroying as well. There was nothing he could do to counter that other than drop that ice. I mean, the freeze spell was there as well for Lana, unfortunately not used, but that would have just been absolutely shattering there.
Oh, I mean, look, he's leaking so much elixir, though. And it's like, Sheck just is not really sure about what he can do because he's got this cannon instead of, say, a Tesla or some other sort of anti-air base defense here. And he's literally just trying to lure units away with these base defenses. That's all the only option he has.
Great kite there as well with the double cannon. King Tower activation too, so that's going to help him a little bit here going into OT, but given that Sheck's on such low HP, I mean, Lana has had such great success with this loom push so far. He's got the counter push on the left right now. It's going to draw the log, but is it going to be enough to get this tower down? He doesn't have any direct damage spells, so Sheck is the only person holding something big here.
Here we go. The balloon comes in. It's got the lumberjack in front of it. Freeze used as well. The rock even gets all the way over to hit that cannon and actually let the balloon get in there even faster. So Sheck, unfortunately, there is going to go down in a 3-game series. And Lana, I mean, I'm getting kind of like meme vibes coming through here, Proto, like not in terms of skill, but just in terms of like the fun he's having playing this game and the decks he's bringing out there. I mean, you know, it was some pretty like, you know, straight and narrow sort of right down the middle stuff there from Sheck, having that very cheap hog cycle, but couldn't deal with all the fantastic goodies that Lana had packed into his bag.
I mean, the deck sort of structure we saw there from both players across those 3 games was a very interesting build. I mean, first game, obviously, Lana just had no chance. Sheck's deck in that first map was insane, but then going forward, the lava clone was what I think Lana was going for, but ultimately it turned into the lumberjack bats that was the big star of the show with that clone spell. I mean, he didn't actually clone the lava hound once, which is, you know, common practice for a lava clone deck, albeit didn't happen once. And then going forward in that final, the lumberloon, obviously you had a lot available there. So I mean, an insane set of builds from Lana, but as you said, more of a meme sort of setup. I wouldn't say meme setup, but definitely some off-meta picks.
Just in how it felt, about how fun it was, right? All right, well, Lana showed us that you need to be prepared for anything tonight if you want to come up on top and move further through this winner's bracket. We're going to take a quick break now, guys, but don't worry, we've still got a bunch of matches coming up tonight.
My world is my storytelling.
My world is diverse. Our world.
My world is astrophysics. It's always been a dream of mine.
I don't know what my career pathway will be.
I approach architecture from the point of view of my culture.
I want to contribute to my people.
It's a way I can give back. I want to change the perception of engineers.
I want to take my tohu home when I graduate.
Right now, it's about me.
And this is my chapter.
How to do nothing. Gaming is a great way to do nothing with your mates. Best part is, you can pretend you're in the NBA. You even when you're in your stepdad's garage.
All right, guys, we are back into the second half of the night. We've seen some very cool matches so far, some very exciting stuff in that last matchup. So let's once again look at what is ahead of us for the rest of our first day of play here in the UOA LPL Pro Clash Cup ANZ Season 1. And we've got next coming up, it looks like it's going to be Proxy and Professor.Live.
Yeah, it should be a good matchup so far. We got a little bit of a sneak preview, so it's looking pretty good. But, I mean, so far we've had pretty even sort of showing site, 2 2-0s and 2 2-1s. So we are still yet to sort of see a real, I want to say pattern emerge, but again, it's early days, so...
All right, well, let's take a look at the two players that are coming up, as we just mentioned, Proxy and Professor.Live, and see if there's anything there to look at. Once again, we've got Professor with a little bit of a lead on the trophies there, coming in at second seed as well. But as we saw, not necessarily something to hang your hat on and say, you know, it's an easy beat this early in the tournament. Certainly things have been going either way so far.
Yeah, it's been very 50-50 across the board, I think, between pretty much all the players we've seen this evening. Trophies and Seed has not had a huge tell on who's going to walk away with the victory in any of our games, I think, so far, really. They've been either really close or we've seen just an absolute domination 2-0. So, look, going into game number 5, we are still waiting for a precedent-setting matchup.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're just getting to know some of these players over the course of this tournament. I'm sure we'll be able to see some patterns emerge as the time and the weeks go on. Tonight, it's just a fun little, learning everything about these players. It's almost like a little bit of a blind date for us here. And once again, we've got Proxy on the webcam. Love to see it going up against Professor.Live in the red. It's Wall Breakers versus Mortar to start off with. These guys, unlike the last matchup, very keen to just get in and get those cards on the board.
Yeah, Mortar, an interesting pick as an offensive building, but one that we have seen an increasing amount of play across the recent times. Hogs to come out as well, but the bomb tower is there. So far, it's looking like a cycle deck on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, Hog's a decent choice, right? Sitting at 5 Elixir there, up against Wall Breakers at 2. Obviously, that win condition a little bit easier to get out. But Hogs, we've already seen at least once tonight them do, you know, what was that, 2,000 plus damage in a single charge.
Yeah, especially when left unattended. So no surprise we're seeing them again here. It is going to be the Miner showing himself, though, for the first time. Bats to counter. And the Goblins are going to do some good damage to that Mortar, but it's going to be the Fireball to finish it off. Yeah,
I mean, perfectly timed and placed, right? It gets oh, Proxy, he's really happy with that. He's like, yeah, you saw that, didn't you? Yeah, man, I got the tower, the Bats, and the Mortar all in one. And a nice little spread from the Spear Goblins at the start as well. So that Mortar did 0 damage to Proxy, especially. Actually, it might have finished the Spear Goblins eventually. But anyway, either way, he's defending quite well. He's very happy with himself at the moment. All right, maxing out on Elixir now. Professor's got to make the next move. And a well-placed Musketeer in the middle means that they won't do anything. Okay, Knight coming through the middle. That's the kind of cycle you probably want to start distracting that Mortar as it hits in.
Yeah, raw delivery here as well is going to be drawn out. So a considerable amount of Elixir here used by Professor.Live to keep that Mortar up for as long as he can, but it's actually going to get a couple of shots off before it goes down. So that's a really good use of that Mortar. The first time it's actually really connected this game. So it's good to see that he's starting to read the patterns here from Proxy and start sort of capitalizing on these mistakes.
And we do see the log coming out there just before the Royal Hogs do, but it looks like the bomb tower is going to be enough, even though the Earthquake comes out and starts putting a little bit of extra damage down there on the side of Professor. Now we're going to have that mid placed Mortar here, just to try and get the extra chip. Bomb tower once again is having to see players flex around to all of these different defensive buildings in this dual format.
It's actually going to get a couple of hits off as well on that sort of more defensive style Mortar, but he's got another one ready to go, so it's going to kite the Wall Breakers back. And this is great Mortar play, but unfortunately it's targeted the wrong tower, so we're going to go into OT. And this has actually been a really close game so far. No one's actually really got a definitive sort of attack going in either of these lanes.
It does feel like Professor is on the front foot here, though, and with that Earthquake coming out once again to do a little bit more damage. The Bats, sure, they're going to clean the rest of this up, but he's got a 700 health lead at the moment as the Miner gets on top of it and tries to do this a little bit more. The Wall Breakers almost get through there, but Royal Delivery coming through to save the day.
That Knight in the left lane actually just did bits. Down to 1,300 there. An insane Knight coming in there from Proxy. The Miner there as well. It's going to be caught by the Knight, but this Mortar directly dealt with. It's not in cycle anymore. This could get dangerous here for Professor.Live unless he can get something down here to take one of these lanes.
Okay, well, a minute left, and it feels like, yeah, that Knight might have changed things around here because Professor really wants to keep things on the right-hand side here, whereas Proxy probably wants to shift things across so the attention is split when those Mortars come down, when he has to try and get some value out of that Earthquake when he's placing him on top of the bomb tower. Now it's so close, both lowest towers in the 800s. The Miner connects, it's going even lower. These Royal Hogs just can't cut through right now, and with 40 seconds left, I think we will have a decisive victory.
Yeah, unless this Mortar can do something, which doesn't look like it. Paired with the Fireball and the log to finish things off, it's GG's. It's going to be Proxy. He's very happy about walking away with that one. I mean, a tough game to start things off as well. Two very different cycle decks, but cycle nonetheless. At least trying to get that Mortar down quickly, but then pairing that against the Miner. I mean, it was a very sort of counterproductive both ways, but ultimately worked in the end for Proxy with the Miner. Just comes out, shows why the Mortar isn't as good as it used to be.
I mean, he had the Royal Hogs to back it up as well, right? But that's just seemed to get completely shut down there by the bomb tower, because every time they came into it, dealing the splash damage, he was like, okay, sure, let's confirm a little bit of damage with Earthquake afterwards, but that never seemed to be as much as, you know, we saw that Miner do. I'm not sure we even got like wall breakers getting all the way to a tower at any point, honestly.
They did a couple times.
Okay, right. Was that's how he did
it was only ever one, though, so it wasn't both. But
yeah. So struggling maybe a little bit but just enough to sort of, you know, cycle through and put enough pressure on that Miner kept applying that pressure, and then in the end, being a little bit too much. He was very happy with himself there at the end. Love to see those reactions.
I mean, the confidence is a big thing as well for any competitive game. I mean, you saw it at the start. He got that really cool fireball off. He was like, yeah, I got this. He looked at the camera. He's like, I got this. And he did. He had it. So, I mean, the Miner deck really did it for him. But, yeah, it's good to see as well. It's really good to see.
It's nice to see sometimes, because, like, you know, if you didn't have that, you'd be like, oh, well, maybe, you know, this is just like, you know, pro players. It's what they do every day, right? Like, it's just another fireball to them. So it is nice to see that reaction and be like, oh yeah, even he was happy with that. All right, Magic Archer. I think that might be the first time we've seen that card come out tonight. It is going to unlock that Goblin Cage and let the Brawler out, but the Electro Wizard there doing damage on both sides is a fantastic response to that. Could this be a bridge spam deck?
Ooh, it could be. It could be. With the Ram, it sort of changes it a little bit. Barb not going to get a swing, though, unfortunately. Our first E-Wiz as well tonight, so no damage traded there in the first set of pushes. The Royal Ghost in the back to sort of change things up, but only 4 cards from both players revealed as the 5th comes out for Professor Live, a Mega Minion, and a Bandit again. No Golden Knight.
Yeah, but we've got the Golden Knight on the other side, and I think that's going to be a real problem here, Proto, because if you think about how bridge spam works, you're lining all of those sort of mid-cost units up one after another, and that's, you know, the Golden Knight is going to eat that for breakfast.
Oh, it's going to be scary. The Zap there to try and slow down the Brawler, but unfortunately the Magic Archer is going to cop a fairly big hit, and he's going to go down pretty quick with the E-Wiz now drawn out as well.
And
so
it kind of feels like Proxy is just waiting for Professor to kind of commit on one of the lanes. You can see he's sitting at very high elixir the whole time. He's leaked a little bit because it feels like he's just trying to wait to see which one of his units he needs to defend and then spam on the other side.
It does definitely seem like the play. I mean, there you go. That's going to be the Golden Knight ability. He's going to get a good hit on the tower there, and he's going to try and send the Bar Barrel in a little bit too late, but the leak from Proxy is pretty big here. He's just sort of waiting for something to happen, but it's nothing that's happening anytime soon, it seems.
Okay, so Pekka bridge spam. There we go, we get the answer. I love that little interaction before as well, by the way, of the dash v dash, just kind of cancelling each other out and doing no damage. So Pekka's going to very easily just tank this baby dragon as he pushes up. Proxy trying to make Professor think about what he can play on which side. The Golem has come out now for Professor. The Pekka's going to do about half of the damage to it, but he wishes he maybe had played that a little bit later. No worries. He's got the second one to come out and defend that.
Golem's going to make it onto the tower as Golemites, but it's not going to be enough damage to get that tower out. So good defense with the Pekka, but it's interesting that we didn't see the main tanks of these tank decks come out until the sort of dying moments of the end, just before OT. Now going into OT, it is going to be Professor Live sort of close to the lead, but now, that Pekka was so close to taking tower.
I mean, regardless, the E-Wiz has managed to get 3 hits on there, right? So both of his towers are now down to 2,400, and he's on the lead no matter which side he decides to push on. Of course, with bridge spam, you do tend to do a bit of damage on both sides of the arena. You're not necessarily focusing on one tower, but trying to make them split their defenses across both lanes.
It's definitely shaping up to be an interesting build. That Golem has only had 1 appearance in this matchup. It's just because he has to keep dropping cards to not only deal with this Pekka, but deal with the rest of the spam that is there. I mean, the Magic Archer, the E-Wiz, the Bandit, it's all culminating to cost that Golem placement. The Lightning, though, is going to show itself there to deal with some of those cards, and some good hits from the Baby Dragon.
Okay, Pekka goes across the bridge now. We do have the Goblin Cage, of course, come out to try and deal with that. But once that building is down, that means there's nothing to stop this ram. And it is going to connect onto the tower. The Barbs will have to face their bigger brothers to try and get anything done. And there we go, more Elixir leaked. It just feels like Proxy is being a little bit indecisive this game, and he's not quite sure which of his defenses he needs to play where when.
He's definitely struggling with his card choice in a sort of quick succession. The Ram is going to unfortunately be used there as well. And I mean, 10.7 leaked with 30 seconds left in OT is not looking good, but it's going to be the Golem, the Kite, the Pekka comes out late. I mean, it is just a super back and forth game, but when we go into OT, it'll be Proxy that comes out, given the tower drain. Oh no, that Lightning. It's put Professor Live in the lead.
Okay, 10 seconds left. Can we get any more damage done? I think there was some Golemites doing a little bit of splash damage onto that bottom tower, and Professor looking to try and keep himself in this. The Lightning will all but confirm that here. So Professor, with about a 300 health point lead there in the end, is going to tie up the series 1-1.
Really well played. I mean, we only saw the Golem put down twice. For a tank deck, not usually what you see, but I mean, it didn't really matter too much in the end. It ended up being the Lightning cards like the Golden Knight that sort of just kept things short, sharp, and sweet, you know, pushing on those counter offensives and getting some of that chip damage in. But ultimately, that's what works against the tank deck. As soon as you get that main tank down, if you can chip on the way on the other side, you walk away with the dub.
Yeah, the Pekka was a fantastic, choice to have in there in order to deal with that Golem. I would have been very happy when he saw that come out as the tank that he was going up against, and every time he got onto it, that combined with the Electro Wizard made it very hard to do any damage, but in the end gets enough to come over the top of it, really. So, yeah, I don't know, anything else about those matchups that, that you're thinking about going into the next one, Proto?
Probably our most even for the night so far. I mean, that is the first time we've seen the tiebreaker come out there at the end for tower damage. So not really surprising, given that it was two tank decks versing two tank decks. You can't really counter push a lane with a tank deck, because if you do, then it turns into a game-winning push, and, it all sort of cascades from there. So going into this third map here, we already have a very aggressive start, as opposed to what we've seen so far from Proxy, and Professor Lives is just letting this happen. Maybe disconnect.
Yeah, that's you'd have to imagine there's been some sort of issue there on the side of Professor Live. I'm not sure if that means we'll get a restart on that. Yeah. I think we might. Competitive integrity and all that, guys, of course. Anyway, so that does raise a question now of, like, does he know it's coming? What cycle do you get in your hand to start with next time? Are you going to be, saving a log that you have or something like that when you've got a Goblin Barrel deck coming up against you?
I mean, yeah, it does raise a couple of questions. Obviously, he knows that that's the deck that is being bought now. I mean, we get a little bit of an insight as well to break things down in between the rehosts, but a Valkyrie with the Goblin Barrel, maybe a Hog in there as well, possibly. If not, we might see another Mirror. That is something that we could see. We've already seen one tonight, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see another one with the Goblin Barrel. But the Valkyrie Goblin Barrel is pretty big to start off with. Obviously, we didn't see anything there from his component, but I mean, based on what we've seen in those sort of first, 10, 20 seconds, it's shaping up to be a pretty interesting cycle deck coming out here for map number 3. So whether or not that's what we see on the flip side of the card is going to be the next big question, because if it's cycle v cycle, we could see another cancellation of each other's decks, and then we go on to and maybe another tiebreaker. I don't know. This has been our most even mashup for the evening, I think.
Yeah, and I guess, we haven't seen Giant Skeleton, we haven't seen Electro Giant, we haven't seen the Skeleton King, I think, from either of those players. So there's definitely room for, that to be in the opposing deck there going up against it. If we did see one of those, really big, beefy decks, how would you expect that to match up against that, the cycle kind of Goblin Barrel deck that we were seeing coming out there?
Depends on the tank that is picked. I mean, Giant Skeleton is not the best at dealing with Goblin Barrels, because, you have to kill him to do the damage. But if it was an Electro Giant deck, for example, that would be really good, because obviously the Electro Giant with that sort of I want to say bootleg splash damage that he gives off from his Zap Pack does have a pretty interesting impact. So hopefully Professor Live is in this time. Snowball to burn on the cycle here. So revealing that spell early on, but both players, again, in the last 3 games we've seen a lot of these players have just been leaking a lot of elixir.
Well, I mean, you know, at the start, it's like, you know, is it a leak or not? If it's matched by the other player, right? It's just about who really wants to sacrifice that thing first. I think it's definitely when it comes into it later. Okay, so it could be like full-on log bait then, when we've got the Princess coming in on top of that Goblin Barrel that we saw last time. He is going to find the poison for that, and here we go. Goblin Barrel coming out now. There's that Skeleton King we were talking about, already adding a couple of souls to his soul summon should he want to get there. But that, in addition to the graveyard, nice little push set up here already by Professor.
Oh, what a set of arrows too. This graveyard's going to be able to do a good chunk of damage early on. No summon from the Skeleton King though. So the Valkyrie holding up well there, and it's going to be the counter push. An interesting choice, but again, it's the Skeleton King paired with the graveyard. No real surprises.
Yeah, well, it's almost just like this 40 skeleton sort of like extended graveyard at that point, isn't it? And this time he doesn't pull the trigger, maybe because the Valkyrie was sitting there already and, you know, just thought that the extra skeletons really wouldn't do anything extra against a card that counters them so well.
And even saying that, the poison alone on the right-hand side's done in excess of, what, 400 damage itself. So there's that. But yeah, we've got the triptych here for Professor Live. We've got the Skeleton King, we have the Graveyard, we have the Tombstone. There's no real surprise that that's the deck he's running, but there's the big card here, or the big spell, should I say, for Proxy shown early. It is going to be the Rocket going into Double Elixir.
Okay, Hunter is the last card coming out from Professor. So he's got... there's a lot of things on wheels in his deck, you know. He's got the Zappies, he's got the cannon cart as well. Nice little snowball there. Is going to push back the Hunter, so he does effectively nothing. This time, the Princess doesn't get poisoned out. I think he's still maybe got a little bit of room, but the Zappies is going to get that last tick of damage in done there. All right, Skeleton King on one side, we've got Cannon Cart Graveyard on the other side. The Inferno Tower is getting pushed upon by skeletons. That's not good. The right Princess Tower also falling prey to some of those skeletons, and that was a very successful push there from Professor.
That Graveyard did absolute work there on the right side. The Rocket will be drawn to deal with this Tombstone before he gets the Skeleton King back down, so the souls have not been recruited. But that is great Elixir micromanagement there from Proxy, albeit down in tower damage. It's going to be able to get that counter out, but already that Graveyard back in cycle on this right side could spell some issues here.
Oh, Proxy, the arrows are going to deal with his guards, and those last couple of skeletons getting even more damage onto the tower. Now down to 550. These barrels need to start hitting hard. That's pretty tough when you've got the Skeleton King coming out to defend them. And he's going to make that push again. Not really so worried about the left-hand side, of course. It's that right-hand Princess Tower that is a lot closer to falling down. Now, Professor is going to once again try and get that damage happening with the Skeleton Graveyard. And here we go. A couple of them are connecting. Too many. Only 1 or 2 hits away from taking it. And Professor Live is going to be our victor here in the 5th match for tonight.
The confidence was there for Proxy from the first, but unfortunately, the cards were not in his favor. I mean, the Skeleton King paired with the Tombstone, paired with the Graveyard. I mean, it has been a really strong pairing throughout Clash Competitive in its sort of addition to the game. But tonight, I think that is probably the first time that we can chalk it up to a successful use of this pairing, because the other times we've seen Skeleton King tonight, he hasn't had as much of an effect as he had in that game. I mean, that game pretty much alone, the Graveyard Skeleton King combo was what was won it. So, I mean...
The funny thing was, though, it didn't feel like they were getting used together, right? You know,
no,
it was like it was the Skeleton King was coming down just to deal with those Goblin Barrels, and then he'd be pushing down the other side when the he'd throw the Graveyard out on the opposite lane. So either way, as you say, finally we're seeing some success out of the deck there, and perhaps something from the other competitors who I'm sure are watching and looking on and trying to work out, you know, what decks are coming out, what's being successful, what is looking like it is the meta over here in ANZ tonight.
I mean, yeah, the meta is definitely leaning more towards that Skeleton King cycle side of things. I mean, we did see those 2 tank decks in the middle there from that matchup, but those are the first 2 that we've seen tonight. And ultimately, as we saw, they pretty much just cancelled each other out for the whole time. It came down to the tiebreaker and drainage from the spell. So at the end of the day, it wasn't really the tanks doing the work like we would expect. So it's shaping up to be more of that cycle style play.
All right, well, let's see how the next matchup shapes up, Proto, as we go into our 6th match of the night. We've got 8 of tonight, of course, with the 16 players coming up against each other. This one's going to be Anderson versus Orange Blizzard. And as we get some of the sort of the middle seeds coming out, you can see Orange Blizzard a little bit probably lower in the trophies than we've seen most competitors tonight, I think. But again, will that mean anything? Who knows? With a couple of 2-1s coming out, it does kind of suggest that it doesn't. And you got to remember, you know, whatever you might be doing on the ladder here, Proto, it doesn't matter. This is standard tournament format. That means everyone's playing with those level 11 cards, so you're going to have everything available to you.
Yeah, everything is open for play at the same level, so there's no sort of huge card difference here for any of these players, which is obviously you need to have it for a competitive setting. But in saying that, you know, it doesn't really matter card level wise, depending on so much the style that you're playing. If you got cycle going up against tanks, you know, things are going to be difficult. But if you have a splash deck going up against a Skami cycle deck or something along the lines of that ridiculous, you know, it's just a complete, you know, you lose it all. It's gone. So the style of play is a big focus here for a lot of these players, I think. And given that they have been watching these first few games, I wouldn't actually be surprised if some of the deck influences have been from how these first few games have played out, because we're seeing sort of a resurgence of the same types of decks, different cards, but ultimately it's been interesting to watch sort of develop over the night.
Okay, Anders v Orange Blizzard, game 6 here in our LPL Pro Clash Cup for ANZ. Valkyrie versus Night Witch. We have already seen a little bit of Night Witch today. Was that a Golem deck? I'm trying to recall.
No, I don't think the Night Witch was with the Golem deck. But she had a buff as well, so no real surprise that we've seen her played here. Given that she has sort of become a little bit more usable, we should say. Bomber will be taken down by the arrows there. But the Inferno Dragon early is an interesting choice with a tombstone, because, you know, get those skeletons into position and the Inferno Dragon can actually do a lot of work.
Goes a little bit early on the arrows there. You can see Orange is unhappy about that. You know, if he had let the Lumberjack get one more hit in there, the final arrows lot obviously would have taken out those skeletons and potentially could have even gotten onto the tower. So a little bit of a misplay early coming out here. We're seeing so many elite barbs tonight. This has been actually one of the big surprises for me.
Yeah, a lot of elite barbs. The Valkyrie as well, paired with the Zappies here, is a good counter push, but the Bomber Zap spell is going to only do so much, and it is going to force another card play down, but look at the damage. It's already been dealt. Half the tower gone.
It is a huge amount of damage to get out this early. Okay, the Inferno Dragon is going to just creep through that, but won't trouble us any further. Now with a couple of Elixir in the lead, Anders as well as like, what, 1,400 damage there in the bank. He's very happy at this point. Just going to play the defensive Tombstone here and wait it out a little bit longer.
He's got plenty of time to do so as well. But with the Golem going down, there's the Golem Night Witch deck that you were alluding to. I'd imagine we are going to see Anders possibly bust out the Graveyard here, provided that is the deck that he's running. He still has one unknown, so the Graveyard could be laying in wait, but he's going to have to deal with this Golden Bomber first, because this is going to be a big issue for him, especially with all of his cards getting wiped out.
Okay, so the spells come out there trying to clear the way for this Golem, but the Inferno Dragon is locked on. Doesn't matter, the death damage will get to the tower. Now you've got 2 Golemites to deal with as well. So you'd call it a successful push, but you've got to look at the other side of this, and you can see that Orange is still well behind. That said, this is buying a lot of time for the Knight, which to start spawning bats, actually. So we've got a whole horde of them coming out on top of this Golem.
The counter push in the left lane is going to be the big thing. Elite Barbs here as well to bring it up, and the Fireball's going to deal with them pretty quickly. Nice. So a good pick there from Anders. Great to see that paying off for him as well. But look at the damage difference as well. This Golem needs to do some serious work. It will get 1 hit in its big form, but ultimately not too much else. And it's going to have to be a serious game of defense here now for Orange, given that he is only on 900.
But certainly looking at the tempo of the game, it feels like it has been switching in the favor of the Golem player as soon as we got to double elixir time here. Struggling to get through, sure, did some damage early, but now slowly but surely it feels like Orange is pushing this back. Oh, we've got the Lumberjack E-Barbs combo, one of my personal favorites, but with a Tombstone in the way, that's going to be hard to get through unless he is willing to use those spells. And as we saw before, it does kind of feel like he wants to save that Arrow Zap combo to take down the Zappies.
Yeah, it's very much what he needs to deal with at the time, and he's good at sort of picking when he wants to use those 2 cards, but it's actually going to be used to reset the Inferno Dragon to allow the Golem to get to the tower. No hit in big form, but again, the Golemite's explosive damage is going to do about 300 damage to the tower, but now a double Inferno, counter push, and the Graveyard. This is going to have to be a huge defense here from Orange Blizzard.
Okay, finally we get some offense from Anders, who feels like he's been playing defense for so long, and 700 damage comes out of that Graveyard, and that means a Fireball will finish it off.
What a great pairing, though. I mean, the Golem deck, as you said, there was definitely a power shift there sort of halfway through OT, but unfortunately that Graveyard connecting, it's sort of having the Golem there was a good thing, but also a bad thing. It allowed him to build up the cards that he had on that left side, and ultimately the amount of sort of just hit points alone in the troops that were coming down that left lane were enough to pretty much stall out any defense that Orange had. Tanked all of the damage from the Queen Tower, and then ultimately let the Graveyard finish the job. Sorry, the Fireball finished the job. The Graveyard got it down to that position, but in saying that again, the damage was done.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rope-a-dope strategy there from Anders. It was like just taking hits until that Princess Tower, as long as it's still standing, that's all that mattered in overtime, and eventually just built up enough elixir to make that one big push and get the Graveyard down to finish things off.
It was really well played as well. I mean, again, the Skeleton King Graveyard deck, we've seen it for another time this evening. It definitely is sort of putting itself in that meta deck spot for our tournament so far. But at the moment, it is still, again, early days. We could see it change completely. I mean, we've seen a lot of different styles. I mean, Lemons on the cycle tonight had great defense, didn't play that meta deck. He's been sort of doing his own thing. We've seen a couple of interesting things from these players so far. So it's definitely getting interesting. We do have that recurring theme of the Giant Skeleton King, but other than that, I mean, anything's up for play here.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as far as like the champions that we've seen come out tonight, I think maybe the Skeleton King might be been the most used, and then Golden Knight we've seen a couple of times, Archer Queen a couple, and then I think Mighty Miner only maybe
Mighty Miner once.
So, yeah, look, a little bit of variety there, but it does feel like Skeleton King, even with that nerf to the amount of skeletons that, you know, the amount of souls he can collect in total, still is the pick of the litter, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of surprised that we haven't seen Electro Giant. We haven't seen that Mother Witch, given that they have been as powerful as they have been in the recent sort of meta. And you know, it definitely seems that even after the nerf, Skeleton King is, you know, a pride and favorite. He does have that really good ability to just sort of summon so many cards at once to deal with, and then ultimately it draws a lot of elixir as well, which we've seen happen multiple times throughout his use this evening. So no real surprise that he's had as such a high pick rate as he has.
Yeah. Okay. And, you know, I think even with, you know, you're talking about Mother Witch coming up there. I'm surprised we're not seeing that out a little bit more, considering, you know, if you're going up against a Skeleton King, obviously that's an opportunity to get a lot of the hogs out, that kind of interaction that we could see. Okay, Goblin Drill and more Rascals. So making a little bit of a comeback here.
I mean, they are such a good card. I mean, for 5 elixir, you get a mini tank, 2 air defense units, and, you know, it's not necessarily a building target either. So no surprise that they've seen another use here, albeit not one that we usually see, but a great snowball counter there. It's just going to shut that down.
And Orange super happy to use his army, skeleton army in that situation because it gives him the opportunity to go for the soul summon. Doesn't choose to in the end, even with that fully stocked Skeleton King there, just going to pop out the Inferno Tower to nullify our cannon cart. Goblin Barrel does come in though, takes a couple of the initial hits just with his wall breaker to try and save a little bit of health on his tower. Meanwhile, Anders has gotten a little bit of a lead to start with.
And it is going to be Skeleton King to counter, an interesting choice, but a good elixir trade there at least for Anders, so no surprise that he's going to go for the counter push now and try and shut down this Skeleton King. Again, no use of the ability, log to clear out the behind the 2 air defense units, and it's not really leading to much of a lead for either player here so far.
Perfect snowball there. Means the Dark Goblin doesn't connect to either, and now we've got a good fireball coming in to clean up both the Princess and the Dark Prince's armor here. And he's just going to push that cannon cart right into range there. That was very well played by Ander to set up that combo.
Bit reminiscent of the Hog Rider Valkyrie combo, but given that now the Skeleton King is charged up on the left lane, both wall breakers connect, and are we going to see the first summon of the night on a fully charged Skeleton King for this match? No, we're not. He's going to go down. I'm not too sure why people are choosing to just not pop the ability.
Okay, nice. Uses the log there, waits for that Goblin Barrel to come in, does not get psyched out with the Princess coming down the lane, and manages to save a little bit of damage for his tower then. You see the boys and girls split up from the Rascals this time, and once again just very scared of that cannon cart coming out, so he's actually going to fire a bullet on the tower to make it a little bit more likely that it doesn't get within striking range of one of these Princess towers.
And it's actually going to deal with the Skeleton King too. Now the question is will the Dark Prince be able to push it forward? No, he won't. It would have been interesting if he could have. Goblin Barrel would get on for a good couple of hits as well. So far, the damage. Left side, the Rascals. Whoa, unchecked. Huge mistake there from Orange.
It was way too late that he got that Dark Goblin down there. Nothing stopping the girls targeting that Princess Tower. So again, he's just having to use these fireballs to try and get damage out onto these towers, but that depends on where Anders is playing his unit. Well-timed log. It's going to save that tower for just a little bit longer, but it feels like the game is certainly Anders to lose from this point on.
He still has one card unplayed as well, which I'd imagine could be that second Prince, you know, a double Prince deck, but he is still yet to use it, you know, 40 seconds into overtime here, which is interesting, but whatever it is, he definitely doesn't feel like he needs to be using it. The Goblin Barrel will come out, and it's actually going to connect. That is going to be game 2 actually there for Anders.
Okay, so a swift 2-0 there in our 6th game of the night. Anders played that very well. As we saw, they're just out-cycling his opponent there. Orange didn't have that log to come out the second time we got there. And then, yeah, unfortunately, just the damage coming in from several sources from Anders allowing him to take out that series.
Yeah, I want to know what that last card was. we didn't get to see it for the whole matchup. I'd imagine it was probably the second Prince if I had to take a guess, but I guess we're never going to find out. He didn't need it. He did it with 9, so hats off.
Yeah, look, could have been a cycle spell. Who knows? It'll just have to remain a mystery. All right, guys. It's still a mystery. Who's going to win the last 2 games of the night? And they'll be coming up soon. But first, we're just going to take a very short break. We'll be back very soon. We'll see you then.
My world is my storytelling.
My world is diverse. Our world.
My world is astrophysics. It's always been a dream of mine.
I don't know what my career pathway will be.
I approach architecture from the point of view of my culture.
I want to contribute to my people.
It's a way I can give back.
I want to change the perception of engineers.
I want to take my tohu home when I graduate.
Right now, it's about me.
And this is my chapter.
How to do nothing. Gaming is a great way to do nothing with your mates. Best part is, you can pretend you're in the NBA. Even when you're in your stepdad's garage.
All right, guys, welcome back. We are here with the next lot of games into today. We've seen, I think it's 6 so far. So that means, if my maths are correct, Proto, and hopefully I can do single-digit subtraction, there's 2 left. What did you think about the matches we've seen so far tonight?
So far, we've had a really good evening. I mean, a really good spread across the board. We've seen a resurgence of one style of deck, but ultimately it hasn't really amounted to too much. We do have our first set of games loaded up for our bracket this evening, and coming into our last two, the final set, Felipe and Octurne is where we turn our eyes to next. It's going to be a good one, hopefully.
Yeah, Felipe, PT, Octurne, Fitchy, who I've been told is our #1 seed for tonight. So perhaps we've saved the best for last. But why don't we have a look at the head-to-head for Game 7, which we've got coming up.
3 seed, 14 seed. So again, a pretty hefty split, but trophies, we've obviously got 600 differentiation there. So again, we're going to say it again because we've said it all night. Trophies and seed don't mean anything. We've had a lot of upsets across the board so far this evening. So no real surprise if we see it again here, but we don't know yet.
I'm also just really impressed he's got 6,000 trophies on the dot.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just that clean 6,000. Maybe you just get there and you're like, you know what, that's really aesthetic. I'm just going to leave that there for a while. Maybe just play some friendlies in Clan Wars, you know, just practice that way. I don't need to ladder grind anymore. I'm just happy with the 000s. All right, I'm sure we'll be getting into that one shortly. Definitely one of the things I'm going to be looking forward to the most next week, I think, Proto. And remember, guys, this is going to be on every Friday night for the next 6 weeks. Well, 6 including this one, I suppose. So if you're here for your your ANZ dose of Clash Royale, we will be live on this channel every Friday night until we have a winner, until we've given away that $3,000. But yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to seeing how these guys evolve over the week. Some of those more stylistic players, some of those players who brought out the interesting things, are they going to do that again and again? Let's see if Felipe PT or Octurne here have anything special for us tonight.
Again, a bit of a slow start. We've seen that across all of them, albeit one of the quicker starts so far in the most recent couple of games. And both decks shaping up to be interesting, but with the Zappies in tow, possibly looking, as I say, I was going to say a Skeleton King, but with the Fisherman there, possibly something a little bit more tanky.
Octurne too late on the timing there. Doesn't get the guards out to protect his damage dealer in the little bamboo man, and unfortunately that means this Fisherman is going to get onto the tower and do some damage. 2 hits there from the big fish hook come out. And now, okay, Skeleton King is in. We've been talking about that all night as one of the premier decks, so that means Felipe feels like he wants to bring it out straight away. When you see that one big guy, you often have to expect the second. Here's the Royal Giant.
Yeah, the Giant Skeleton Royal Giant deck, we saw it at the start, our mirror matchup, as some would say. It's going to get a couple of shots off too before being taken out, but it's going to draw the freeze spell. So I'm picturing maybe a balloon on the bottom here for Octurne paired with the Lumberjack to use that freeze, is what I'm thinking. But in saying that, it would make some kind of sense. But going up against a Giant Skeleton Royal Giant deck, he's going to struggle here because he's going to have to manage Elixir really well, and that's going to cause the use of that freeze spell more often than not.
Oh yeah, and using the freeze spell defensively, that's when you know you're struggling, right? Like that's Struggle Town 101, I think. Not only does he have to use it on defense, which is not ideal, but he reveals it, and a lot of the power of the freeze spell is often in when you get to use it for the first time and revealing that to your opponent, because you don't want them to expect it. Now just like straight away having to do this in the 2 defense here. Once again, there we go. The Royal Giant still getting shots in despite a heavy defensive investment. And even then, he's got no counter push.
Nothing to show for it all on the counter side. We see Felipe actually sitting up here. He's starting to get into it in OT, but I mean, so far it's pretty dominant on his side of the board. Only like, what, 50-something points of damage dealt on the right side there. And this right lane is very stacked right now. And again, forcing that freeze spell, it's going to mean that he's not going to have that counter push yet again.
Every single time it comes out, he's just bleeding damage and he's got nothing to show for it. Cycling through some of these lower cards just to try and get something on the board. And as we keep saying, try and find that counter push. Finally, a unit is alive. I say that, is it going to get taken out by the Giant Skelly's death damage? Almost, or at least enough for the Zappies to finish it off. So Felipe, it just feels like this is a huge deck mismatch here. And yeah, look, regardless of what that last card is, even if it is the balloon, I don't think it's going to be enough for Octurne to push through.
I don't even think we're going to see it based on the amount of elixir he has to drop every single time a push comes out from Felipe, because there's nothing that he has that can directly answer these cards in terms of a heavy damage dealer like a P.E.K.K.A. He has to keep relying on this freeze spell, which means his counter push ability is pretty much null and void. This Royal Giant's going to connect for at least 2 or 3 shots here as well, which means that this right tower is not looking good. And the Fisherman, I mean, just look at this stacking.
And just when you've got one down, the next Royal Giant greets you hello with a big cannon. And as you can see, an Earthquake was the last spell. We saw that coming out there at the end just to, just add a little spice to the finish there. Wow, that was probably one of the most one-sided matches we've seen tonight, and it's a little bit hard to tell. I mean, what was your read? Was that like a player difference, or was that just a deck difference?
I think it was a bit of both. I mean, Felipe's management there, lane-wise, was really good. I mean, he only conceded, I think, 56 damage overall in that matchup. So he had the ability to manage not only what he was pushing, but what was being dealt with elsewhere. There was no sort of counterplay at all there from sort of, there was nothing coming in from the other side of the board. So he was just able to pretty much walk around and do whatever he wanted. Well, the Royal Giant was, let's say that. But yeah, it was definitely a deck mismatch. Whether or not the player mismatch was a thing, we will see in game number 2, but definitely a deck mismatch.
Yeah, maybe that was, a bit of a skill difference there, something that exacerbated the already very hard to play, having to use defensive freezes, just ugly. The freeze is meant to be the surprise spell. It's not meant to be the panic button that you press when everything's going wrong and there's, 10 elixir staring down the barrel of your Princess Tower.
I don't even think we saw a counter push there from Octurne at all. We didn't get to see his big card, or at least I don't feel like we did. You say the Lumberjack was his big card paired with that freeze. He didn't get any value from it at all other on the defensive standpoint. So whether or not that last card was the balloon or was a Hog Rider, we didn't get to see it. It felt like he was playing defense for all of the game we just watched. And ultimately, that's pretty much how it panned out. I mean, you go back and watch that back, it was Felipe's game all the way to the bank.
Yeah, it never looked in doubt. Right from that first freeze, it just felt like it was a foregone conclusion. So hopefully Octurne has got something a little bit more interesting here in game 2, or at least a little bit of a better matchup. Of course, it's a dual format, so all of those cards that we saw or even didn't see, as the uncovered cards in the end, you still can't use them again. It doesn't matter if you're holding them in your hand or not.
No, both players here going for that cycle build though, and it is going to be the Mortar Miner combo to come out here, but the Tesla at the bridge, the guards are going to clean it up, and the Mortar may have actually got on tower. No, the Night Down quick enough, so good kite there. Good kite, really well done by Octurne. So Felipe, a little bit of damage, but no definitive lead.
Some good defenses just coming out here while the buildings get it done. Finally, a lock onto the tower. The Mortar is going to get one. Doesn't get the second shot on there, but the Miner rolls in just as the Archer goes out of range. And now gets even more hits onto the tower.
Good read from Felipe there too. Great read, in fact. Was able to get that on just as he was charging up. He didn't want to spend too much there, but I mean, just look at the pressure, the constant pressure from Felipe here. He's drawing everything out. The Knight will kite the Mortar, and it will allow him to get that Tesla Skeletons down, but so far, I think Felipe has that breathing room to let that happen.
Yeah, not too worried so far. Okay, we've got our Expo. First deck of the night. I think some of the player names even that we've seen tonight have been expressing their distaste of Expo as a card, but look, it's a win condition, that's for sure. This time doesn't even connect with the tower. Too much coming out to deal with it. The Miner will jump in and tank the last couple of the shots before it goes down, but now we can see why there's so much fast cycle on the side of Octurne. He's going to want to start rolling that out and putting those Expos up a little bit quicker. Here we go. Now that the cannon cart is deployed and out of the way, you can place the Expo in such a way that it won't draw aggro from it.
Which is good. Which is good, paired with the Miner, though, to deal with this Expo. It hasn't really had too much effect so far here. For Octurne, unfortunately, as well, getting that cycle. It's going to be more of a defensive play here for Felipe, knowing that he has to deal with that mortar. He didn't have the cycle to play the mortar offensively, so he's going to switch to the defensive mortar, which is still going to do some big work in the midfield here. So, in saying that, he still holds the lead. He just wants to hold on to it going into the end. We could see our next tiebreaker here.
Well, Octurne playing from a similar point of view. They're going to go for the defensive Expo next. So both players just switching back and forth because, of course, when you're playing, you know, Mortar, it's kind of similar to Expo in the way that, you know, you need that elixir advantage. You need to somehow eke that out to play those buildings offensively and get the lock onto the towers. You just...
Good Miner.
Yeah, it does manage to get some damage through there. So now... getting out ahead. Oh, actually drops that 10 elixir at once with the Tesla in front of the Expo.
Just trying to get that Expo to target, but there's just too much on the board for Felipe to just shut it down. I mean, using so many cards there to kite the Expo's sort of focus, the Miner's going to connect for another 500 damage, 400 damage, and he just keeps trying to get this Expo to make a play, but he just cannot get it to connect to a tower. There's just so much tank-wise there for Felipe that this Expo is getting completely shut down.
And it just feels like having that second win condition is what is getting Felipe ahead here, right? I mean, we've only got Expo for Octurne. That's it. And if it doesn't work, he is done. Felipe at least is managing to get that chip damage through with the secondary win condition of the Miner. It doesn't matter if his mortar makes the hits or not, because in the end, he's still doing that damage little by little with that, and of course, the poison.
Yeah, a little bit of a bait as well, like you could sort of say, with the poison and the mortar. You're obviously not going to be expecting that sort of second win condition card to come out. That Miner has gone unnoticed. A lot of times he's done so much damage in this game alone, 30 seconds. Unless this Miner can connect to do some serious damage in the next 30 seconds, it will go to tiebreaker, but here he comes. Knight to defend. Might be the condition that we see here for the win, but the defensive mortars just keep coming out, and Felipe has got this under wraps.
Well, he's not going to change that up at this point, is he? I mean, he's 2,000 ahead. The snowball's even going to come in, and that's how weak the tower is. A little bit of ice will just push it over the edge. So I believe that was a 2-0 from Felipe there.
Yeah, Felipe 2-0, yeah. Really well done from him. I mean, we say it was a player difference, but I mean, deck difference for first game, I will say player difference for second. The management, again, from him on both of those lanes. Very similar decks. Two direct damage dealing tower cards, being the Mortar, being the Expo. But Felipe being that little bit smarter, having that secondary backup of the Miner. I mean, the way he played it as well, just so good at dealing with whatever was coming his way. Hats off, really well done.
Yeah, I think it makes you think about the macro side of this a little bit more, doesn't it, Proto? Because, you know, the deck building side, the philosophy behind going into these games, because sure, you can play that out as much as you want. It doesn't matter how good a player you are. I feel like the Expo deck was just never going to work there. And when you think back to how much difference there was in the deck working in the first game as well, it does make you think that maybe Octurne has got some work to do, some research to put in, you know, because he's going to be falling down into that losers bracket now. And if he, you know, look, you guaranteed $200 from, you know, getting that 16th place and up. But if he wants to move it any further than that, I think he's definitely going to have to stick his nose in the books. But look, think about all that kind of stuff. Why don't we have a look at our next two players?
It's been interesting. It really has. And given that this is going to be our most sort of one-sided, I say one-sided, but back and forth game, first v 16th seed, trophies speak a lot here for this matchup. 1,000 for Fitchy in terms of a lead, as well as first place seed in the qualifier out of 200 contestants plus. Going into this genome, I don't think there would be anything else to say other than Fitchy is a favorite here.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. I mean, you know, what kind of, you know, format did the qualification take? How did they earn those 1 to 16 seeds? It's not a question I know off the top of my head, honestly, Protos. So, you know, considering the results of tonight, it might not even be that much of a relevant one either. I think the matches that we've seen tonight are the real, the real answer to that question of where these players are currently standing, and definitely the players who have come out, and really stomped their opponents. They're the ones we're going to be looking out for next week. Is Fitchy going to be able to do that? Look, I kind of hope so, honestly, being that, I want someone in this tournament who's that big, someone to be feared, someone for everyone else to be looking at and worried about. So, can he do that with something interesting? Can he just do that, through standard play? Maybe another player, who was it, like Lemon, that was using the crazy
Lemons,
decks? Yeah. If they come out and have to use those to get through their initial rounds, maybe that's something you kind of want to save for finals, save for something when there's, bigger prizes that are on the line.
I mean, given that we have the 16 best players out of 200 and something, I'm not really surprised that we have seen such a back and forth sort of thing at the moment, given that it is round number 1, the first 8 games played. In saying that, though, we have seen a couple of those big hitters sort of starting to emerge from week 1, whether or not that is just because they're playing on meta in current week and then off meta in the next. I guess we'll find out. But focus of the rest of the night, Fitchy and Barn, both players with their cams on, both happy to get right on into it, some emotes. And this could be the biggest game of the night.
Okay, Fitchy versus Barn. As you said, Barn's loving this, man. Look, he's
having fun.
He's very keen. And here we go. We've got the Dark Prince going up against someone who I feel honestly stole a bit of the homework in terms of their appearance. Getting the mace. Just grabbed a spare one of the Dark Princes out of the cupboard before he came onto the battlefield. Oh, okay, double Prince deck.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I feel like this is the double Prince deck we didn't get to see earlier. So, yeah, interesting choice from Barn, but going forward, we'll see how the Princes play out. Obviously, the normal Prince has had a series of nerfs and buffs, so whether or not, look, Fitchy,
the Tombstone, the Tombstone Zappies combo against a Prince is just about as good as it can get. But yeah, as you were saying, like we saw, jumping across the lake there, across the river in the middle, of course, that's one of the addition that all of the Princes got, so you can play them anywhere around the field now and have them hop over just like old mate Hog Rider used to. And off the back of the Tombstone finishing, feels like this Valkyrie's probably going to come out ahead. Hecka. So this is a heavy deck from Barn.
Yeah, more of a 4.5 depending on these last couple of cards here. Obviously with the Pekka double Prince, I'd imagine maybe even a poison in there given the old deck, but this is going to be the max counter. The Pekka hasn't swung in a solid 3 seconds. He is just getting absolutely bullied on this right lane here.
Oh man, Zappies plus any kind of skeletons is the absolute antithesis of what you want to be seeing as a Pekka or a Knight player. It is a nightmare. Right there is probably
Barn knows.
Pun very much intended. And you can see Barn is just losing his mind here, because what on earth can he do on it? I don't know what those last 2 cards would have to be to let him back into this. Rage certainly not one of them. And Electric Collector, definitely not another one. They're just going to
do much.
Oh boy.
Our second 3 crown of the night, and what a victory from Fitchy, showing us the true power of the Skeleton King Graveyard deck. I think that is probably the best seeing that we've, the best sort of showing that we've seen from that deck this evening, in 3 crown fashion as well. But a deck like Pekka Double Prince, which has been out of the meta for, I want to say 2 years. I really do. Brave choice, very brave choice. He sort of made it work, but he made that fumble in the mid game. Obviously, having the Zappies and the Tombstone made things pretty hard for Barn.
I mean, this is why we don't see heavy decks like that this often, because they just have so many counters, right? Like, there's just any number of things that could come in from the opposition's deck and just absolutely ruin your day. That seemed to be one of the more extreme examples of that, where Pekka is essentially in stasis when you've got that many little things tickling it, tickling her. But okay. So a very, very crushing victory, and I mean, you can't even. We were talking about like player strength versus deck strength. Like, you can't even tell. On that game, honestly.
Direct counter.
Yeah.
It was that was all deck. I don't think that was telling of player. It definitely would have helped Fitchy, but yeah, that was definitely a deck-on-deck violence moment. So we'll see if it changes in this sort of section. Both players with cheap cards off the bat. So Fireball drawn early from Barn here, an interesting choice.
I mean, it's kind of wiped the smile off Barnes' face a little bit. You can see him actually getting a little bit more serious now, perhaps. The Golden Knight does make it onto the tower straight away, calculating something in his head there. He's trying to work out what could the deck be. What is this cycle going to be? Okay, he's got Zap to deal with Goblin Barrel, and he's not very happy about that. Of course, when you've got those cards equally leveled, you know, the Goblins are going to live. A Sparky. Okay, so Barnes coming out with some real fun stuff here, while Fitch, it seems like, has been, as we talked about earlier, kind of playing it pretty safe.
Yeah, pretty safe, pretty on meta. Obviously, he's going for the Goblin Barrel. Cycle could have a mirror in pocket as well. But the giant Sparky deck, an old combo, coming back for a bit of a showing here. Sparky is going to be drawn out by the Royal Delivery, though. But the Heal Spirit's going to put him back up to health. Could he get a target on here, though? Oh, I know the cards. But he was so excited as well.
The facepalm comes out when he realizes he has 2 shielded cards on Fitchy's side to get through. Man, I don't know, like, I actually haven't checked this beforehand. I'm pretty sure the players don't have any idea what the other player is picking.
They've got no clue,
with their decks in the dual format, right? And so as a result, how on earth, like, is Fitchy a mind reader? How does he come out with these, like, perfect counters to whatever Barn is putting out?
Literally perfect counters, 2 decks in a row so far. I mean, unless this Sparky can actually connect and do something in sort of the coming minute, it's going to look like Fitchy's going to be able to whittle this tower away like he has so far in this matchup. He's got a pretty nice push on the right side, but Sparky, it just seems like a pick that's going to cost him.
I mean, look, he gets a double shot there, the Sparky onto the Golden Knight and the Goblin... the Goblin Bamboo Shooter guy.
Dark Goblin.
Thank you. Sorry. A little bit of a brain fade. And unfortunately, the health points of the Princess Tower are fading for Barn there as well. And you can see, once again, he's kind of just sitting there thinking, what on earth can I do? Fitchy with the offensive good game, actually. How do we rate that?
I mean, I don't really blame him, but at the same time, you know, you gotta still have some.
Oh, look, he's still laughing, right? Barn's still having a good time.
Yeah, Barn's still having.
Give us a wave on the camera as you make your way down into the lower bracket, mate. That was one of the quicker matches tonight. Conceding, as we can see all 6 of his crowns, unfortunately, over the course of those 2 games. Meanwhile, Fitchy, stone cold killer. That guy just, like, I mean, almost no emotion showed as he just tore through Barn in that last series.
I mean, there was the slight smile at the start of map 1 when he realized that the P.E.K.K.A was in stasis for as long as he was. But yeah, map 2, no remorse, no emotion, just absolute killer, straight down the middle. Didn't even mess around. 3 crowns. Thanks for coming. And yeah, he's pretty happy. But again, I mean, we said that first seed v 16 seed. It definitely, I think, showed a little bit in that game, especially for map number 2.
All right. Well, let's have a look at where we have ended up after those 8 matches tonight and get a little bit of excitement going. Think about where we're going to see next week. So we're having a look at the upper bracket here. You can see Zolnino, Lemons. That's going to be a fun one. I think I'm definitely keeping my eye on Lemons for the rest of this. And down the bottom there, Fitchy with such a big victory is also going to be someone to keep your eye on. Proto, what do you think about this? Are there anyone else you're looking at out of those top 8?
I mean, yeah, Fitchy, Felipe, they're going to be 2 players to keep an eye on. Lemons is definitely one that I'm going to be paying close attention to. But other than that, you know, it has been a very split sort of upper bracket. We have 3 pretty big players coming in for our top bracket so far.
Yeah, all right. Now let's have a look at the lower bracket as well and see those 8 players who fell by the wayside tonight. They're down, but they're not out. They've still got another chance. That's how the double elimination bracket works. 2 losses and you are out though. So from this point on, it's cutthroat for those bottom 8 players. We are going to start removing them next week.
Yeah, the lower bracket's going to be one, I think, that is slightly more interesting. Obviously, some of these players had those 2-1s, some of those players had those 2-0s. So whether or not they're going to be able to make those plays, and as you said, it's going to be cutthroat down there. Everyone's going to be playing on meta as hard as they can play, and it's going to be very competitive, I think, compared to the upper bracket where they still have that second chance.
Yeah, maybe some of those fun decks they pulled out tonight, will come back and make a resurgence. Who knows? Maybe they'll find a good matchup for the double Prince or the giant Sparky deck going into next week. Unfortunately, the top 8, their decks are too tight. No holes in the defense there. No way to sneak an arrow over those ramparts. They march on and get even closer to taking away that $3,000 first prize.
It's been an amazing night. It really has for our first week. I mean, it really does set a precedent at the level of play. And I think we're going to be in for an absolute treat when we go into next week.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much it from us here tonight, guys. Of course, we will be back at the same time next week. Please join us again. This has, of course, been the UOA LPL Pro ANZ Cup Clash Cup, and it's season 1, so we're only just getting started, guys. Please join us next week, and thank you for joining us here on the first night.
Up to triple elixir with the earthquake and plague, sudden death, and oh my gosh, at the last second.
That was actually a big upset. Sudden death.
I think it's their game right there. Go Zero. There you have it.
Congratulations, what a great game.